Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. In Season 2 of Hacks and Hobbies, we're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. We want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. Let's get started, man.
Okay, you're going to tell me what you want to talk about first?
Yeah, so I mean, we could jump right in and because see that's the other thing that we probably want to talk about is because you're producing podcast, right? You just started.
I just started.
And right, so you just started, and there's a lot of things that you're learning as you go along. Like, oh, I could do this better. Oh, I could do that better. I'm in the same process.
I think I'm a pretty unique situation in a lot of what I'm doing is because apparently I'm a giant loser in that I've been doing all of this stuff. I've been doing all of this stuff for a long time. Like I've been doing audio for a good decade.
Yeah.
I mean serious audio. Like I've been doing industrial work.
Yeah.
For Fortune 500 companies like this stuff. And this is why I'm a loser is because I never thought to translate to do this stuff for myself.
Like, hey, I could probably do this for myself.
I think it was about a year plus ago where I was working for this company, a startup. It was before I was consulting before.
Mm-hmm.
And I set up a green screen, and I set up a podcast station for them, and I set up a green screen and all this stuff. And the thing that was funny about it is I didn't have a single question on how to do all that stuff because I've done it so many times.
Yeah, it's like driving a car.
Yeah, I know exactly what to do, and I know exactly how to go about doing it and doing it very well. And then it just dawned on me, it's like as I'm setting up this green screen, and I had this like amazing system. I was like really proud of the system. I was like, why am I sitting around at night going, well, I don't do the stuff I want to do. And I have all the tools. I have everything that I need to do. I can't even begin to tell you how many hundreds of hours of film production and stuff that I've done. And not even to mention that, I went to school for this stuff.
School to work for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school for 3D animation and film special effects. I know exactly how to do this stuff.
That's awesome. So,
but then never did it for myself.
So those are some of the topics we could talk about.
Oh, we haven't started yet? God, that was gold. It was
that is gold.
That was podcast gold.
That is podcast. That's the intro, bro. That's going to be in the beginning.
You have to tell me when we're starting because I just can't keep giving you this gold.
All right, starting. We can start in the back. I mean, this could be this is the podcast, man. This is it.
Wait, this is it?
This is it. Because you know, that's the part of the podcasting. And I talked to one of the guys, and he's like, as soon as I'm on a call with somebody, I start recording. No matter what we're talking, that's gold.
That's creepy.
Because you're
what, every phone call?
Every phone, because he's a coach.
Oh, so it's not.
So that's literally what he does.
It's not like when he's on the call with Verizon. He's just recording.
Actually, that won't be too bad because that's some good material there, especially if
freaking Verizon.
There's a podcast called Reply All, and it's hilarious because this guy gets a call from this scammer telling him that there's a virus on his computer. He's like, hold on a second, let me hit record. He recorded this entire conversation with this Indian dude, trying to tell him, that there's a problem on his computer and that, there's a virus and that they can help and fix it, and then they have to transfer $5,000.
Yes. It's amazing.
It was amazing. And then, so this entire podcast is like 2 hours long.
That's not like MacKeeper, is it? I'm pretty sure MacKeeper. Do you know?
It's not MacKeeper. It's Reply All.
No. MacKeeper is software that you can buy for your Mac to clean it and all this stuff.
Oh, okay. No, it's not.
But yet everything leads you to buy more. Like Geek on Demand is like, we'll fix everything for $1,000. Like, no, I just bought a 99-cent piece of software to defrag my hard drive. I don't
exactly. I don't need that. I don't need that. So Grayson, so
okay.
happy to have you.
Now we're starting. This is the beginning. Okay.
This is the beginning. Guys, I have an amazing genius mind. I've trapped him in this audio box. I've met him on the job, and before this, I did not know that he existed, and I was blown away.
Although, oddly enough, I was completely aware of you.
Obviously, he knew exactly who I was. He's like, "Oh, I know him." Right? It's when you meet people, you're like, "Dude, I didn't know you existed, and now you exist in my line of sight." And we're driving together to the train station, and
yeah. Oddly enough, this was a multi-year plan for me to get on this podcast. So
absolutely,
I heard that
following me.
I heard that Junaid 5 years ago was going to start a podcast, and so I went through all of this work, got hired at the same job, and got to know him.
What's funny is that you put the bug in my ears to start talking about Queen Bee. That was your idea.
Start talking about what?
Remember, I told you. So I'm starting beekeeping. I started beekeeping. Remember?
Yeah.
And you're like, yes, you need to give me some honey.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna do podcasts. He's like, dude, you should totally talk about Queen Bee. You know who Queen Bee is, right?
Beyonce.
Like, who? Beyonce. So that was my first episode on this podcast, based on what you put in my ear. So you've obviously been
it's true. It's a multi-year plan.
Oh my god.
Oh, your first podcast was about Beyonce?
Yeah, it was about Queen Bee. I talk about Beyonce, and then I talk about Queen Bee.
I got to go back and listen. I mean, isn't it funny how you never listen to the first podcast? Like when you find a new podcast, I never go. You scroll all the way down. I never go back to the first one.
It's like, what's the latest one? What's he doing now?
Hearing you talk about Beyonce for a good 20 minutes is something I need to experience.
I might have you disappointed because I did not talk about her for 20 minutes, but it's a good amount. So here we have Grayson Scott. He is an amazing, multi-talented individual. As the more I learn about him, the more we talked on our rides to the train station and on our rides to the camera store or the Apple store. Can't remember. We went to a lot of different places.
Well, I should preface. I'm your typical East Coaster that I don't have a car, so I mooched rides to the train station on a daily basis from Junaid.
It was awesome. I mean, we got to uncover a lot of cool things. We got to learn about each other. And I told you multiple times, dude, you need to start a podcast. You need to start a podcast. And you're like, you know who does a podcast? David Burkus. I'm like, who's David Burkus? It's like, he's my brother-in-law. Right? And then I was like, oh, David Burkus. So then I go dig him up. I listened to some of his podcasts and I reach out to him. And it's just a funny story. And I ended up buying his book, Friend of a Friend. So Grayson, you're here, and
you stalked him online.
I stalked him online. I mean, that's what you do nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And for good purpose.
You wrote him notes.
I wrote him notes. I wrote him text messages.
You look pretty today. There's a restraining order out on you, and it got weird.
Well, when you're a public personality, there's no privacy.
Oh, it's awful, isn't it?
It is. It's awesome. I think it's awesome, and that's what Seth Godin says in his book, and this is marketing. He says there is no privacy. You might think there is, but there is no privacy. Every single engine that we are on is using our knowledge, our text and content into building themselves up.
That's true. Actually, it's the thing that I'm freaking out about right now is, on Facebook, they have the 10-year thing that's going on where people post.
What is this?
Okay, so people post, because I don't know when you're going to post this. It's probably going to be like in March of 2021. So back in the days when there used to be a Facebook, right before flying cars, or whenever in the future you actually post this. I don't know what flying cars have to do with Facebook. But anyways, okay. So they have this thing where that you post where you were 10 years ago and then today. And someone was wrote something that said, "You guys, this was started by Facebook to improve their AI on how their AI sees aging in human beings."
That is freaky indeed.
And it's like,
that's why they're doing it.
So Facebook is just like, dance, little puppets, and then we just give them whatever data they want.
Like, give me all the data so we can correctly identify what you look like 10 years ago. And
and just in general, so that the AI has all the a larger data pool to understand how to track aging. So that was good.
That's super crazy.
So sorry, you were. I keep interrupting you. You've tried to start this introduction, and I think the reason why I keep interrupting you is because every time you start, you talk about what a genius I am, and I'm just
you just can't.
So let's do that again.
So here we have Grayson Scott. He's a multi-talented genius. He's done so many different things that I've dreamt of doing. And I'm like, what? You've done that already? Yes. He's like, yeah, I've written 3 books. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, I've done this musical score. I've done this play. So for a long time, I've been telling Grayson, you should start a podcast. He's like, I don't know what to talk about. And then recently, he's like, I'm thinking of doing this movie. I'm now in New York. And I was like, dude, you should totally document the entire process of how you're going to get this accomplished. And that's going to be a really good material for whatever it is you want to do from there on. And Grayson started that podcast earlier this month, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a new year. It's back in the ancient days of 2019.
Ancient days of 2019.
Once again, in the future, when people eventually hear this podcast.
That's a really good way of talking about things, because I should probably preface that to all my guests. Like, we don't know when this podcast is going to be edited, so let's make it future proof.
Yeah. Back before the days of the dystopian wars and back in the savage years of 2019. No, actually, it's right. Janae had been pushing me to do this podcast, and that was the thing, is I wanted to have something to say. And honestly, I was going to do the film regardless in 2019, or at least get it started. But the thing that really pushed me over the edge was my daughter came out to hang out with me during the holiday season, and she's just this amazing artist, right? And her goal in life is to be a storyboarder at Pixar, right? That's what she wants more than anything.
That's amazing.
And she's getting really good at it. And the thing that I thought about it so years and years ago, I interviewed at Pixar, and one of the reasons why I didn't go there was essentially when you get a job at Pixar or any animation studio, you're hired for the couple years that for that film, and then you have to reapply, or you have to get invited to be a part of the next film. Otherwise, you're just unemployed again.
Oh, wow.
Right? Every single production cycle, you have to get re-invited in.
It's like a reevaluation.
Revaluation. Go on, try one more time. That was fun. Go on, just one more time.
It's like a reevaluation you get.
No, that wasn't it either. Anyways, so the thought was that she wants to go into an industry of entertainment, which is a rough industry. And so what finally got me off my butt was that was really for her. And so that she's still in high school and she has a few years. And so the idea is to really document a process of making a film, of an indie film, from beginning to end. What it was like to write the script, what it's like to try to get funding for it, what's it like to actually cast and have all the production problems and have all of the stuff. And the idea is the step by step so that she can actually use it, hopefully, when she wants to do some of this stuff on her own when she gets older. So that was the thing that I was like, I really need to help out this amazing young woman. So yeah, so it's been going well for the 17 days that I've been doing it. And
Wow.
in a day of ADHD, I could be done in a I could be done next week. You never know
You
when your
never
brain's
know.
just gonna go,
Exactly.
here's the next thing.
You know what's funny is I got to speak with Kevin J. Roberts earlier, uh, actually last year. He's an expert on ADHD, and he actually wrote a book called Schindler's Gift, and how Oscar Schindler, the movie that's based on him, Schindler's List, he was an ADHD, or he had ADHD, and he was able to use the techniques or the gifts of ADHD to save 1,200 lives. I mean, isn't that just amazing?
Yeah, that is. Actually, there's a lot of really famous people that actually have it, that have to deal with ADD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a particular sort that I was diagnosed with because they tested me
Yeah.
and I was off the scale. Like literally, the doctor's like, "We can't document how weird you are," and so this doctor was really interesting. He was really interesting in it, and so he started like looking into it a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
and did a bunch of tests. And I was a guinea pig for him for like a year.
Yeah.
And what he did is he came back with me and said that I have a thing called hyper focus disorder.
Oh,
So it's actually the opposite of what you would think it is. It's not that I don't focus. It's just that I'm so
super focused.
focused
Mm-hmm.
that when I I'll be sitting here working, and then I'll get up and walk out the door and forget my keys, forget my
Yeah.
coat, forget everything. And so it looks like I'm completely like I'm not focused at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is I literally sometimes can't turn it
Turn it off.
off.
Yeah. No.
So which is a giant pain, because it's like anybody who has to live with me
Yeah.
has to hear about every single idea that I ever have, and I just like don't let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
yeah.
that's an amazing gift because, as you know, all superheroes say it is a gift, but it is also a curse.
Yes, it is my superpower.
That's the superpower.
But Justin Timberlake has ADHD too, so
Boom. There we
there
go.
you go. So it's
It's
okay.
okay.
It's
It's
cool
okay.
though.
It's cool now. Yeah.
As does Will Smith, by the way, and Jim Carrey.
All right, man. I need to go get tested so I can have a certificate that says I am qualified.
Certificate that says broken.
Exactly. Broken like everybody else. That's awesome, dude. That is amazing. So the flow of this podcast is really it's all about hobbies, and it's all about life, because hobbies are part of life that help us um, be better versions of ourselves in one specific area. And
Why are you laughing?
because
This is your podcast, and
I
you're
know
laughing at.
I'm laughing at myself because I just remembered my wife telling me, it's like, all you care about is your podcast. You don't care about anything else. Like, I know I'm really bad.
Yeah, well, you have recorded 700 podcasts and not
Well,
released them.
yeah, I haven't released 700
I'm-
podcasts.
you've been interviewing people for like 3 years, and you've never released it.
It's like, well, they say, you got to have a really good long tail, and so that's what I'm aiming for that long tail.
I've I've never heard that phrase.
You've
You
never
have
heard
to
of the
have a
long
good.
tail?
No, no, I
Well,
haven't.
you've been
I'm
in
actually,
marketing. How do you not know about long tail? Or maybe it's an advertising term. Long tail. So when you do Google search, and when you search for terms and you look at keyword um, retention, you'll see a spike in the middle, and then you see, people are still searching for that same term, just not at a higher frequency, over time. So you get to see, oh, people are still searching for that term, and where is these terms going to, where, like, who's turning up on those searches. So that's the long tail. So not just focus for the high hits, the heavy hits today and tomorrow, but also look at who's going to be searching for your content 30, 60, 90, 120 days from now? So that's the long tail.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got it.
There you go.
Now you've learned. We've learned something.
Now we've learned something brand new. I mean, we haven't done that in the past 700 days.
Well, you haven't released the podcast that you've been doing for the past 700 days.
Wait.
Like people are going to be like, "This is a really good podcast," but it sounds like he interviewed people in 2002.
You know that's something Gary Vee also always says. He's like, I wish I had documented the process of me taste testing before I could even drink wine, because he was like 16 years old and he's tasting dirt, he's tasting grass. It's like, oh, basically developing his palate. So documenting is great, and that's where you're on the right step, man. Doing the podcast and documenting the process, and the reason behind it is simply amazing too. I love it.
Yeah, I think so. It's something that I'm actually having a lot of fun doing it too. But I did. Okay, so I'll actually talk about the hobby.
Let's get to the hobby
as opposed to all this other stuff. By the way, I'm going to talk about the hobby, and then I'm going to instantly diverge.
That's fine.
We used to have these discussions at lunch, like nonstop, and it was the most unfocused. Like just mess. But we used to sit in this cafeteria of this stupid, like horrible, like uptight company that we both worked for, and literally be like with our gang of designers and artists, just crying and laughing so hard, and people just staring at us like, what is wrong with you? So we get off track easily. Okay, but I will talk about hobby. I forgot what I was going to talk about, but that was a really good way that you tried to segue back into the hobby. I noticed that was good work on that.
Thank you. As a listener to this podcast, I appreciate you guys, and I've talked so many times about the platform that I use, and that's Anchor. Anchor makes it so much easier for me to publish my podcast to several different platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and so many more. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcast. I absolutely love Anchor, and I use it to record my podcast, Hacks and Hobbies, that you're listening to right now. I love the ease of use of the Anchor app and the way that I can publish the podcast. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
It's like you've interviewed. Okay. I see how I'm going to stop making jokes about you not releasing your podcast. And I will say this, the reason why I'm giving you a hard time is I want to hear them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So, well, no, you have heard them, I hope.
I've heard them.
Okay. So, yeah, no, I'm having a great time doing it. I will say the biggest challenge on a personal level is doing all of the stuff that it takes to grow the podcast. So I'm writing a blog daily. I'm doing bi-weekly podcasts, and then I'm going to do monthly video blogs that basically sum up everything that's happened during the month.
Nice.
So I'm doing all that, plus all of the work that it takes to actually write the film and try to do everything that it takes to actually make the film. Yeah. So it is interesting, but I have a good start on it, and I think it's actually going really well so far. Like the script is pretty funny. So I should preface saying that. So what I'm doing is a romantic comedy set in New York City. So we're going to film all throughout New York City, and I do have a background doing stand up. So I do stand up in New York. Performed at the Comedy Cellar and a bunch of really great places. Been doing stand-up for several years.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing, it's really interesting, is that I took the outline, but then when you're doing stand-up and you're going to write a joke, essentially what it is in stand-up is that you have to have a joke every 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So if you actually look at the really great people, you could literally time their jokes every 10 seconds or shorter, that they're actually getting a laugh. Other than that, it just feels too long, which means the average person speaking, that's 26 words.
26 words.
So you have 26 words to set up and deliver a punchline. So if you're telling a story, you literally have to pace your story by every 26 words, have some sort of laugh. And so I'm doing that with the film too.
Nice.
So everything that I'm doing is like I have it down to, my outline is completely done. So I know exactly what I want to say, I know what I want to do. And then it's a matter of going through, and every 26 words having some sort of punchline.
Nice.
And the trick is to make it so it doesn't sound like a sitcom, because a sitcom is set up, punchline, set up, punchline. So yeah, it's fun.
The beginning of the podcast, we were just talking and rambling. So now that you've given me this data, I'm gonna have to go look, and because we were laughing a lot. Like, was it every 26th word that we had a joke? Or
oh no, I'm not. No, but see, that's the things about stand-up, is that it's so scripted.
Yeah.
Like people the whole idea of stand-up is to make it sound like you're just having a conversation.
Oh man.
But every single joke has been tried and true, and tried and bombed, and you have to restart. And like, there's so many jokes that I think is just absolutely hilarious, that I haven't been able to bring to fruition, because I literally have written jokes where I'm at home laughing, just laughing and crying, and then you go to work and you tell it to some of the people that will still listen to you because you're an annoying comic always trying out material, and they laugh, and then you go get on stage and it just dies. Just
it's not gonna work, because
it just doesn't work for one reason or the other.
It's because you've built a repertoire with people that you've been around, and when you deliver to a brand new audience, they don't know who you are. I'm like, well, that's not really funny. You might be funny, but that specific line was not funny.
Yeah, and you just don't know what is gonna upset them. And it's also order. Like I have jokes that I've done that were dying, but then I changed the order they come in the set, and they really work. So the joke that you say beforehand will definitely have an effect on the joke that you say afterwards. So, but to write an entire script like this is really fascinating. It's fascinating. It's like working a puzzle. I have 82 scenes, and 82 scenes, that average out to 2-3 minutes per scene. But then you got to think about every 5 to 8 seconds you're having an edit, right? So you're to write all this stuff, and then the other interesting thing is, as I'm writing this, you have to think about, can we actually film this? Like one of the scenes is when I was a kid. My dad really wanted me to go out and hunt with them. Like, and it's just like I should say, on a personal level, even as a kid, I love big cities. Like I am a New Yorker through and through. I love.
You're a city boy.
I literally go to New York to relax. Like the sirens and the people and all that stuff. I just get there and I'm like, this is nice. Where most people are like, this is the worst. So my dad, when I grew up in Colorado, so they take us out, like up in the mountains at like 3-4 a.m. and make us sit in just like a patch of wet grass in the middle of the trees, hoping a large mammal would come by that we could shoot it with bows and arrows. And if we ever did shoot it, then you have to track it and then murder it and skin it. And this is not something I wanted to do on the weekends, right? But my dad really wanted me to do it. And so what would happen is he only took me twice. And the first time we sat in this wet patch of grass in the middle of the Colorado Rocky Mountains, and I got the hiccups like really bad. Right. And I'm not talking like, just like hiccup, I was like making sounds like, like right. I was like just over and over. And my brothers were like, shut up. Just shut up. Right. I was making all these sounds. And then my dad goes, if you don't shut up, I'm going to tie you to a tree and use you as bait. Right.
Like, how are you being?
It's like, oh. So there's like that scene. There's a scene like that in the movie where we're going to cast this kid and he's going to have to go hunting. And so, but the thing is like, okay, but how do we do that? How do we actually find a location? How do you, and not only that, how do you get a crew out to the location? How do you get a minor, a young actor and his parents, I'm assuming, to travel to that location to do all this stuff on a shoestring budget, and so there's just stuff like that, little things like that, that's like, yeah, I really want to include this, but how do you rewrite it so that you get the same
effect?
Same effect. And I think I'm just going to do it in Central Park.
Hey, why not? You could totally, green screen the heck out of it.
No, I don't think you have to. I think what happens is I was walking through Central Park, and there's a few places where there's like really dense trees that you could just do a close up.
Yeah, that's all you need.
It'll give them the idea that you're in a forest, and then there's stuff like, okay, so I want to shoot in Central Park. What sort of permits do I need?
Yeah, that's right. You got to get those permits.
Well, the thing, and with permits, I found out as long as you don't have a crew above 3 people, you don't need you don't need a permit, right? So that's why you see all these NYU and Columbia and all these film students just running around the city, especially in Greenwich Village. You just see them running around shooting all the time.
That's pretty funny
because they don't need that. But you may need a special permit if you're going to do it in a park. Anyway, so the point is, I'm trying to do all the marketing, trying to do all of this stuff. And trying to write and put together the production, and it's crazy.
No, that's just amazing, and
have a job, and have a day job amongst all this stuff. So
yeah, man, that's what you get for being so creative and talented. And I have the same problem, but I'm not working on a whole movie. I'm just working on some chapters, working on the book and the podcast. That's it. That's my life. I had some really good questions in the middle, but I just want. But I totally forgot. Should have written them down. But one of them was how you mentioned.
What I respect is your professionalism, Janae.
I totally forgot those amazing questions. But they're all in line with what you were talking about. And I'm just gonna keep dragging out till I pull those questions out of my head, I guess. But it was around the point where you're saying, you're working on these things and you're thinking about all the things and yeah, whatever, dude. We're gonna have to have another podcast just so I can go re-listen and be like, hey, remember that time we had a podcast?
Wait just a second. Did you just say we're gonna have another podcast? Because I really wasn't paying attention.
Because I wasn't paying attention.
You're like, I really wasn't paying that much attention to what you were saying.
No, I was really enjoying what you were saying. I didn't pay attention to my own questions to write them down. And by the time I grabbed the pen, they all disappear. But what's awesome is, the process of doing this, and there's billions of people in the world, and you'll discover people, and they're like, yeah, they've been doing this for a long time, and you're like, how did you get into this? I'm like, well, I was a professional at it, and then I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I just did it. Like,
Yeah, I totally. I'm very actually really upset with myself at the moment for that exact thing because
Don't be, because there's no point in living in the past. We got to make the future.
I know, but here's the thing. This is, if I'm being honest,
Yes.
since this isn't going to air for a while, I can be honest, and hopefully my employer, this by the time you hear this podcast, my movie might be done.
Yeah,
So
you never
hopefully
know.
things are going well. So hopefully this will be a good get in 2021 when this is released, because Grayson Scott, the director of the latest Academy Award winning indie film.
Hey, man.
Anyways,
Yeah.
the what I was gonna say is, I always wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
this. Like literally always wanted to do it. I got into
Yeah.
design to to help me in my film career.
Hopefully get into this.
Right? And then I got into motion design to help with to hopefully get into film, and I learned Flash to get into film. And I've been doing all this stuff to get into film,
Yeah.
and like I've been working for these corporations. They're like, "Hey, we need to shoot industrial spots."
Mm-hmm.
Did all that for years, hopefully to get into it.
I was.
And then in my personal life, for some reason, it's just like, eh, and never did
Yeah.
it, even though in the back of my head, I'm like, this is actually what I would prefer to be doing.
One thing. Again, I'm gonna mention this genius dude, Gary Vaynerchuk. He says, you might be working for a company for somebody else, 8 to 11 hours a day, right? You're spending 11 hours of your life doing this. You're spending 40 hours a week, whatever. But when you work for yourself, doing what you absolutely love, you will not mind working for 60, 80 hours a week, because you're doing something that you're truly passionate about. And that's what, that's the motivation, and that's the goal, essentially.
See, I don't. It's your podcast, so I hate to say I disagree.
You can disagree, man. I do not care.
I don't disagree with you. I disagree with his statement,
Sure.
because I had my own company, and I was doing something. I was doing my own stuff for a while, and it was my own company, and I was working like 20 hours a day, and it almost killed me.
But the question is, were you doing a movie?
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm talking about, essentially.
So what you're saying is that if you do what your natural propensity, what you're naturally drawn to. See, I believe that. I honestly think, in one of my books that I wrote, called The Third Age, there's a thing in there where this is set way in the future, where basically the human race has figured everything out.
That's around the time this podcast is going to be airing. So
yeah. So, yeah. So, and one of the things was there was a person in it whose job it was to help people find their purpose. And what the thing was is that, and I'm going to get very, very ethereal and very out there for a second, is that I think one of the reasons why the world is so far out of balance is because people aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And I think if people did the stuff that they were naturally drawn to, if they did the stuff that internally, almost like an instinct, instinctively we're drawn to do certain things, but most of us don't do it. So in other words, I want to make films. That's the thing that I really want to do. But if I make films, how do I eat?
How do you eat?
Well, there's people out there who want to do nothing more than bake and make food and just love that as much as it. And there's people who actually really do love government work, which is just mind-boggling to me.
Absolutely.
There's people that love to do these things, and I think for me, it's just an interesting phenomenon because we don't give ourselves permission to do these things. And I think that's where I'm, the thing that I'm coming to at this stage in the game is I have finally given myself permission to do what I want to do. because I mean, I was once again being raised in Colorado. You don't go into the arts. No. That's just not acceptable. Yeah. And so, my family and everything, the way that I was brought up, it is not acceptable to do all this stuff. And so you find that you're carrying all this stuff around. And so it literally was a matter of over the period of last year and coming to this, that I finally said that I gave myself permission that this is what I'm going to do. And thankfully I'm supportive in my personal life, and everybody's like really, and I will say this. Yeah. This is one of the reasons why I love New York City. Like I'm a total geek for New York City. There's people listening that probably have this whole thing about they hate New York. And I love it. And here's the reason why is in most cities that I've lived in, if you say, oh, I want to make a movie, I want to make a full-length motion picture, 90% of the people will look at you and tell you why you shouldn't do it. Or they think that it's like, oh, that's too much. Why would you do that? It's too much. Or and it's just, and in New York, you say, I'm going to do a movie. They're like, yeah, go for it. Cool. Here, I have a friend who's doing the same. Here's a dozen people that are doing the exact same thing, and from that standpoint, when you say, hey, my girlfriend talks about how she met Bono and has all of these stories where she flirted with Bono, and she hung out with like all these famous celebrities from what she does for a living. And you get outside of this area and you start talking about it, and people are like, oh, they're bragging. Why are you always bragging? And it's like, no, that literally is just my, like we were sitting in a bar on like the Upper East Side in this little dingy like Irish bar, and we turned around and Patricia Arquette, no, not Patricia Arquette. Oh God, I forgot her name. But anyways, a very famous actress was just standing around behind us, just hanging out there. Being a human being. And I was like, wow, that's such a cool New York moment, that this award, like I think she's been, I wish I could remember her name. Anyways, I'm dying that I'm going to forget her name. But anyways, it's, so you have this stuff, and that's what I love about the city is that whatever dream that you have, people are like, yeah, go for it. Doesn't matter how big it is. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. Is like being here now, people are like, yeah, go for it.
It's awesome. I love it. Well, Grayson, this was an amazing conversation. I loved it from the beginning. I don't even know where the beginning is. So
which beginning?
We gotta figure that out. But tell my audience, tell these amazing listeners, where can they listen to your podcast, and where can they find you?
You can listen to it on just about any podcast platform. It's called Grayson Squat. Grayson Squat. So you really have to do me a favor and edit that out. Thing. I've never said that in my entire life, and that is not something that I want getting out.
Maybe because you're squatting all the
time. Oh God, don't tell Dimitri.
Don't worry.
Oh my God. Okay, so ask me that question again, because you're going to please edit that out.
I will edit it out.
Okay, so ask me the question again.
So Grayson, it was really amazing chatting with you today, and let the audience know. Why don't you let the see, now I'm gonna fall over the place.
Take three.
Hey Grayson, this was amazing chatting with you. We had a lot of laughs, and I'm sure the audience had a lot of laugh as well. So why don't you tell the audience where they can find you and listen to your podcast?
Okay, you can find it on just about any platform. It's the Grayson Scott Memoirs. I changed the name of that. Did you know that?
I did. I listened to all of your podcasts.
I should mention that, because that is one question I'd like to get feedback from everybody in the audience about. But anyways, Grayson Scott Memoirs. It's on Anchor, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you want to find it. It's there. Or you can go to lifeofgraysonscott.com and follow along on the blog. And then also you can go to Life of Grayson Scott on Instagram, which is great, because that I post a lot of my photography that I'm using as kind of pre-production, where I'm doing scouting locations, and I'm posting a lot of the photography up there, and have a pretty decent following on Instagram.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Grayson. I will be sure to include all of those links on the page, the show notes, and
who knows what they'll be when you
that's
actually post
true.
it.
Oh my god, what a saying! But I'll post the ones that you mentioned, so that way they can quickly
Okay.
go to them. Thank you for your time, man.
Awesome.
This is awesome.
Thanks, man. This was fun. We should do it more often.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this Hacks and Hobbies episode. Junaid would love to hear from you, so please leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit hacksandhobbies.com to find additional information on the guest today, as well as the show notes.